how is NIO doing here in China, and more specifically, how is the ET5 doing here in China? I got a lot of beautiful charts to show you guys, data, and also we're going to be talking about its main competitor here in China. That is, of course, the i3. If you want me to compare the ET5 against Model 3, like this video, and maybe I'll do that. And we're also comparing it to Zeekr as well, because these three companies, BMW, NIO, and Zeekr, they have the majority of market share in the premium luxury EV space here in China. Now, I want to make it clear, the i3 is not the egg-shaped i3 that you guys have in Europe or the US. It is the sedan version of the i3, the electrified 3 Series that they sell here in China. Very, very different. All right, keep that in mind. That is the car that we're comparing to. That is the car that is selling quite well here in China. That is the car that is ET5's main competitor, and also along with Zeekr as well. So let's quickly run down a few of the features of the i3. The i3 originally started at 413.9, which is roughly 56.8K US dollars. Boy, I can tell you, you gotta shoot me twice for you to like make me to buy that car. All right, that's just my stance, but we got to go on with this video. Well, for that price, you only get the single motor rear wheel drive variant of the car that has ACC. If you add some more money, you get the dual motor variant, and that only has an acceleration of 5.6 seconds. On top of that, compared to NIO's 3.8 seconds for the ET5 and NOP Plus versus just automated cruise control. So NIO's, all those aspects are much better. ET5s are all dual motor. But some of the other drawbacks of the i3, there's a lot of plastic inside the car. The floor of the middle seat in the second row is elevated because the i3 is a direct conversion of the gasoline version of the 3 Series. And then the front kidney grills are all just basically plastic. And also the boot isn't even electronic. You still have to manually open it up. BMW has cut prices for the i3 all the way down to as low as 270K RMB, which is even cheaper than the 3 Series here in China. That's around 37K US dollars. And quite recently, they also introduced battery rental pricing. You buy the car, don't buy the battery, and pay $980 a month for the battery. That's the exact same price as NIO at $980 a month. And what do you get for that price? You get air suspension. There's automated sunroof. You got a bit more headroom than the ET5. You got a continuous dash plus center display. And if you add 8,000 extra, you can get the Harman Kardon sound system. Of course, there aren't bad cars, there are just bad prices. If the car is cheap enough, of course, it's going to sell. And not to mention, of course, no battery swap. So 270K RMB for BMW i3, whereas for ET5, 298K for a ET5 after the price cuts. Let's look at the sales numbers, all right? So I got this beautiful chart for you guys. As you can tell, from February, March, ET5 numbers very, very good. And then we started declining in April, declining more in May, declining more in June and July as well. From 6,000 down to 2,300 in July. Now, when the ET5 first launched, the co-founder was very confident that the ET5 will surpass the 3 Series in terms of sales. The gasoline 3 Series, not the i3, by the way. Obviously, that has not happened. Because you got to understand, the primary customers of NIO are still BBA, those BMW, Mercedes, and Audi enthusiasts that used to drive those cars. Nowadays, if their budget is around 300K RMB, they go to a BMW dealership. They look at the 3 Series, it's pretty expensive, 330K plus RMB. But then they can get the i3 for 270K RMB. Plus, on top of that, they get a free license plate and maybe even some subsidies on top of that. Holy smokes, that's a very good deal. So this product is directly aimed at competing against the ET5. BMW i3 sales sort of increased, and even despite the price cut in June, the sales of the ET5 were not doing that good. Now, of course, we got to add in the ET5T, which is also pretty much the same car, same price as well. And if we add that in, we can see that deliveries of that, which is right here labeled in pink, if you combine ET5 and ET5T sales, then we are solidly over BMW i3 sales, which is really nice. And I think this trend will hold, that these ET5 and ET5T will be above BMW i3 sales. What's really even more important, I think you guys got to consider, is Zeekr. Now, this was a pretty shocking statistic for me as well. Zeekr also did a few indirect price cuts by lowering, not really exactly lowering prices, but increasing the specs that you get. So basically, you can get a higher spec car for a cheaper price. All right, so you still pay the same amount of money, but you get the higher spec car. And that seemed to have really hurt NIO quite a lot. Because if you look at the deliveries of NIO's ET5 versus Zeekr's 001, look at February and March. NIO was holding steadily above 6,000, and then Zeekr was around 4,000, and then we got that all of a sudden boost in the specs that you can get for the car, and bam! Now all of a sudden NIO was in the 4,000 and Zeekr is in the 6,000 for April. Product-wise, the Zeekr 001 has a bit more storage space than the ET5, obviously, because Zeekr is a touring car. That is also why the touring is super critical for NIO as well. ET5T is a direct competitor to the Zeekr 001. But the main advantage of the Zeekr is, of course, its air suspension is pretty nice, whereas the ET5 and ET5T do not have air suspension. But as you can tell, ET5 sales has just been declining from April, May, June, July, whereas Zeekr's 001 sales have been steady. And keep in mind, I don't want this to sound too negative, but Zeekr has recently cut prices again because they are going to launch the LiDAR version of the Zeekr 001 later this year. So that's actually another advantage that NIO has that Zeekr doesn't have. NIO has LiDAR, whereas the Zeekr does not. The starting price, 269k RMB, which is the same price as the BMW i3 actually, at around 37k US dollars. You can either get the dual motor variant with 86 kilowatt hour battery pack or single motor variant with the 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. So you can, for the same price, you can choose speed or range. And then for a bit extra money, you can go for the dual motor variant with the 100 kilowatt hour battery pack at 297k RMB, around ET5's starting price of 298k RMB, but still a little tiny bit cheaper than ET5 starting price. But with the Zeekr, you're getting the 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. You know, these guys don't have battery swap. We know how beautiful battery swap is, but we're just going to continue on just the product side of things. And then Zeekr is also offering the 140 kilowatt hour battery pack for 100,000 RMB extra, and that gets you 1,000 kilometers plus range. CLTC. NIO was doing well at the start of this year, but what people have done is they have severely undercut NIO, lowballing the hell out of NIO. It makes it so that their product has some standout features that in those aspects are better than the ET5, but because the vehicle price is so much cheaper than the ET5, and especially in this economy where people are cutting their budgets down, it's making people choose those other cars. That is also why the ET5T, as you can see on the chart versus Zeekr, ET5 plus ET5T, 5,999 total in the month of July. They really need to overtake Zeekr with these two products together. But I have a feeling that NIO will be forced to cut prices once again in order to move volume, move sales. And they already are. They're cutting prices by, well, not exactly cutting prices, but offering discounts of up to 24,000 RMB on ET5s, particularly inventory cars. But I think from what I discussed with the NIO manager, they can just quickly write any car as inventory car if they get the permission to do so. And with the discounts on these inventory cars, the discounts that NIO is offering, that puts the car at exactly about the same price as these competitors at around 274k RMB, which is exactly where these guys are at. And then with NIO's ecosystem, it's a no-brainer, of course, you would go for NIO. Of course, NIO doesn't have just this one vehicle model. We also have to consider the ES6, and keep in mind the ES6 did encounter a product switch. The reason I'm comparing with the ET5 is the ET5 is the only product that doesn't have a product switch. The ES6 did have a product switch from first gen to second gen, so the deliveries for that during April and May and March were just terrible for the ES6. But Here is that chart since you guys know this information. After the product switch, we can see compared to BMW iX3, just massive increase for the ES6. This, of course, will be a big volume driver, but the ET5 also needs more price cuts. Model 3 Highland is coming out. BMW i3 is probably going to continue cutting prices. Recently, Model 3, the current version of Model 3, got prices cut. It is a very intense situation with these especially these entry-level sedans. So I think NIO will have to cut prices soon as well for the ET5 even further and turn those discounts that are already happening into just a straight-up price cut. But hey, I am optimistic that the ET5T could potentially overtake Zeekr. There aren't bad cars, only bad pricing. Stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.